Hear me out for a minute. Season 8 of Game of Thrones isn't that bad. Okay, listen, there's a lot wrong with it, but in a very optimistic way, if you watch the series finale as if everything else leading up to it makes sense, it's actually kinda decent, and the character arcs that should have spanned over 10 seasons are actually very interesting. This is a large ask though, and you're only really able to enjoy Season 8 if you can move from episode to episode, understanding what it was trying to do, while still letting go of everything that is actually happening on screen. And this sucks because what we were given objectively isn't that great. It's rushed, character actions are forced, and a lot of Season 8 feels as if the writers realized they ran out of time and they just needed to wrap everything up as fast as possible. Unfortunately, with that race to the finish line, character actions and plot details just kinda need to be swept along rather than being fully developed on screen, and it kills almost all of the momentum going into the final episode. And this is a self-inflicted wound too, which makes it even worse. Effectively killing the ending of your show because you want to move on to something else rather than spending time to finish off what could have easily been one of the greatest TV shows of all time sucks. Being a Game of Thrones fan must be torture because, let's be real, George R.R. Martin is never finishing those books, and you're kind of just stuck with an unfinished story that only works after 6 layers of heavily fixing everything in your mind as you watch. I started watching Game of Thrones in November, just having finished it a few days ago, and after having friends and family hound me to watch it for a while now, I finally caved because I needed some other way to spend my nights than grinding out schoolwork in my dorm room alone. So, my friends and I made it a nightly tradition to watch Game of Thrones for basically 2 months straight, and man was this show good early on. I'm telling you, the minute we finished the episode The Reigns of Castamere, my jaw was on the floor, and I just sat in silence for 5 minutes in sheer awe of how great of a twist that was. I was completely broken because how in the world could Robb and Catelyn Stark be killed off so fast? And not to mention, Arya was right there, on the cusp of getting back with her family, only for everything to be taken away from her all over again. Albeit, my friends gaslit me into believing this episode was a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and quote, just another episode we had to get through to get to the good stuff. But even still, this episode is now something I regard as easily the best episode of television I have ever watched, period. Season 6, episodes 9 and 10 were also probably 2 of the biggest mind-bending moments of the entire show. The haunting opening of episode 10, as you realize something is completely off, and in the back of your mind you're realizing the wildfire is still below King's Landing, is one of the best slow burns into an episode I've ever seen. The score, the acting, and the sheer devastation of Cersei completely winning, having just come off of one of the greatest battles in the Battle of the Bastards in the episode previous, leads to some of the greatest highs and lowest lows you feel in the entire series. I legitimately let out a gasp the minute Tommen jumped from the window, and the way this first half hour was shot too was perfect, as you have a sense he's going to do it, and the frame just stays completely stagnant from the moment he walks away to the moment he decides to jump out of the window. It's Shakespearean in nature, right? Only when Cersei finally wins does she lose everything in the process. There are so many other examples of these insane moments going all the way from seasons 1 through 4, and even for large parts of season 5 and 6. Season 4 is by far the best season, and I don't think there's a single episode in that season that misses. From Joffrey's death, to Tyrion's trial, to the Battle of the Mountain and Prince Oberyn, to the Battle on the Wall, my favorite battle in the entire show, to watching Tyrion shoot Tywin through the heart with Joffrey's crossbow, this season never misses a beat at any moment. And it's crazy to look back on probably the greatest 12-episode stretch in television history, starting from season 3 episode 9, going all the way until the end of season 4. And don't even get me started on the characters. Peter Dinklage is such a good actor, and the nuance he brings to Tyrion as we watch him struggle to find his identity and find a way to make something out of value out of his life, even overcoming every circumstance surrounding his rather miserable existence, is so interesting, and the way he's developed over 8 seasons probably makes him the best and most thought out character overall. The same could go for Robb, Jon, Daenerys, and plenty of other characters in the show. I do understand the issues with Daenerys in season 8. Her sudden character shift to become someone who's always sick and tired of trying to be the better person was poorly done, but as an idea, I still think it would have been really cool had it been done right. Eren, in Attack on Titan for example, takes this idea of a leader who can't help but try to make the world better by any means necessary for his people, and for me, I was able to watch her arc as if it developed properly like Eren himself. The one arc that I think is kind of unforgivable is Arya's. Arya's whole personality shift in season 8 was done way too quickly, and it's never fully certain if she finished her training to become no one or if she left to go back to being Arya Stark. Aside of killing the Freys, Arya never uses her masks again after that, and that whole aspect of her still trying to find herself just gets washed away entirely and replaced with this overconfident persona of someone who tries to act better than everyone else around her. When Arya left Braavos though, that's not how she was at all. She learned to care for someone who she didn't know outside of a play and saved her life because she knew it was the right thing to do. And to go from that to an Arya who seems so war-hardened and like she knows everything was such a sharp change and never something that was even alluded to slightly. It's kind of hard to swallow that she's just this insanely strong swordsman now, after not really showing us that she trained that much to become so overpowered. And I think this idea could have worked, and I think it could have been really cool, kind of like Zoro's goal to become the best swordsman in One Piece, but in order to reach that same level of character growth, you have to build to it in the first place. Sansa and Bran's arcs also aren't great, but I think they're a lot more forgivable. You watch Sansa become hardened and untrustworthy of everyone outside of her own family, so her reason to keep the North separate from the rest of the Seven Kingdoms makes enough sense for it to be justifiable. Bran also kept being referred to as the bridge between all of history, at least from Tyrion, so I can understand why they went away from the Three-Eyed Raven direction and more into one of a history-focused one. I don't like it, and Bran does feel like a nothing burger character by the end of the show, especially with how much of the Three-Eyed Raven was built into him, but it's slightly more palatable than something like with Arya, because in this instance, there's at least somewhat of a noticeable motive behind it. I'm kind of dogging on the show right now, but I want to make it abundantly clear that this is easily some of the best television I've ever watched, hands down. Season 8 might be a little bit of a bummer for sure, and what they did to some of the characters really sucks, but so much of everything else leading up to the ending is so exciting that even though Season 8 wasn't everything people wanted it to live up to, Seasons 1 through 7 have some of the best writing, directing, and acting that I've seen in modern television. There are still positives to Season 8 with that being said though. From a purely visual aspect, Season 8 is stunning, and watching everything play out as if you just kind of turn the audio off for a minute is breathtaking for such a huge budget TV show at the time. And even in Season 8, the battle between the Hound and the Mountain was such a touching fight that wrapped up one of the most interesting character storylines in the entire show in such a great way. Watching Sandor jump into the flames with his eyes all bloody and his brother beating him up past what life should allow was a perfect encapsulation of the Hound facing not only his fear of fire, but his fear that Gregor was truly better than him in every way. There's so much great about this show, and I know there's a lot to hate, and a lot of criticism for this show is completely valid, but so much of this show is so well written for 6 to 7 out of 8 seasons that even with Season 8 being a letdown for sure, it's something I can look past and realize, although not everything might have been presented correctly on screen, the ideas were at least there for this show to be borderline perfect.